Welcome back. This week we're going to go with another original pattern here. This one has been a long time in the making, the concept of it at least. A lot of tweaks on this pattern, but this one's the clown car. It's based off of the Rapala, the original floater. When I was a kid, I used to wear smallmouth out on the Juniata back home on that lure, and it was in the clown color, so the yellow in the back and the red in the front. And there for the longest time I was trying to mimic the swim that it has on that, because the swim that lure has is a little different than the traditional S-swim patterns that we have, or that we tie with the articulation. That one kind of kicked more side to side, and the back end was erratic, but it went the opposite direction that the head of the fly went, and I wanted to mimic that. And for the longest time, like I was saying, I just couldn't get the concept down, or couldn't get the fly to do what I wanted, what I had in mind. So after a lot of tossed patterns and missed attempts on these, I think I finally got to it where I'm really happy with the way that it swims. It's still not identical to a Rapala, but I really don't know. It would take a lot to mimic the way that swims, but this is pretty darn close to it. So we're going to go ahead and get into this one. The back hook on this is an MFC 70/50 size 4, and we'll start with the gel spun. 100 as always for the streamers. We'll get that right to the barb of the hook. Go ahead and tie that off, or trim that off. For the tail on this one, I'm going to go with Marabou. I tried doing something more rigid for a long time. I even tried doing like a UV over the Marabou to keep it more rigid, and it was a complete failure. Complete failure. So we're going with just the straight Marabou, and then let me make sure that I got that. There we go. We're going just straight Marabou on this with yellow. We're going to do 2 plumes and get that out of the way. So we'll get this tied in. We'll get our first plume going. That material just a little bit, and measure it out to be about the length of the hook, maybe just a little bit longer, and then we'll tie this in, get that nice and secure. And then before I open loop that to the front, I'm going to take 2 strands of gold Flashabou. Nothing new here. Nothing new here. Double the 2 over, get 4 on each side. And we'll bring this forward. There we go. We got it doubled up. And everything's set. And then we're going to throw on our second plume over top of that. And this is just going to give us the shape that we want. You're going to see when I tie the remainder of this, you're not going to get the typical Marabou tail whip that you get because of a few things that's done on this to eliminate that. Like I said, I didn't want that erratic S-swim on this one. I wanted to mimic that original floater. and this is pretty darn close to the swim. Pretty darn close. Alright, so now I'm going to take and advance this forward. Just build my taper a little bit, clean everything up. Give that a trim. And now all I'm going to do with this for the body is a dubbing loop and some yellow ice dub up to the front. Alright. So now we'll take this yellow ice dub, get a little bit of this here. It may be a little too much. It should be pretty good. It should be good. I can move it around if I need to. And then we'll get a quick spin on this and keep it relatively loose. I like some of the extra strands and fibers to be sticking out on this. I like it to be a little picky. There we go. You can see we've got some wild fibers just showing through there slightly. Nah, back that up. Alright, then we're just going to rip this right through here, right up to the front. Leave, oh, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch. Because now what we're going to do is shore up the sides of this, and we're going to add some profile, and we're going to add some bulk to this pattern. So now I'm just going to take and find 2 yellow dyed wood duck feathers that are pretty close to one another. They don't have to be exact. I just want them pretty close. I'm not real picky if there's a little bit of a curve, which that one's pretty good. I should probably save that for a top, but that's alright. If there's a little bit of a curve, it's not a big deal on these laterals. Where it is just like on a boogeyman or a cougar or anything when you're doing them on the top. So now I'm going to take one of these on each side. Get these secured. Get that out of the way. Go. And then I'm going to run the same thing on the camera side. I don't really like that feather too much. I'll find a better one here. Nope. This package is pretty well beat up. There we go. Maybe. Make sure that's going to be pretty close to my other side. Now I'm going to run this on the opposite side laterally. And this shores up because you have this cup right here, you can see the cup on there, and it's going to go toward the tail. It kind of cuts down on, well, not kind of, it does cut down on the side-to-side whip motion that you get on the tail, which I know is opposite of what we want when we have those tails, the marabou tails on there. But for this one, I wanted the motion to be a little bit limited. There we go. Now we have the 2 running down the side like so. Got a little bit of marabou sticking out the back. We're going to cover that up here with a good piece right over the top. So all told, I'm going to have 3 mallard flanks per hook on this one. So now we'll measure this out. There we go. Now the two on the side create a little bit of a profile, a little bit of bulk, and they flare out a little bit when it's in the water. This top one is same concept as a cougar or a boogeyman. It's a directional piece. It's kind of like a rudder going through the water. Now if you look on the underside of this, you can see that yellow comes through nicely, and get a nice look on this pattern. Now I leave a decent amount of hook on this, or a decent amount of thread on the front. Not to worry, I mean it's going to be covered up with our next mallard flanks. The only thing that I'll do is I'll take some yellow on this one and touch this up just slightly. There we go. Now before I take this one out of the vise, what I'm going to use for my connection is 30-pound spider wire. I tried for the longest time to do this with the bead-along that I use on most everything else. I was not able to make it work. It wouldn't cinch down close enough, and then I'd always have a kink in the wire, or I'd always have just a slight little loop, and I would still get that tail whip. So I was watching a Charlie Craven video a while back, and he used this on the baby gongas, and it brought me back to this fly. I was like, oh, that would be perfect, because after I tied a few of his, I looked at it and I was like, this is going to be the exact thing that I need for this pattern. So I kind of got this one from Charlie Craven. So it's always good to watch other videos, other tires. You just never know what you're gonna see, what you're gonna find that may solve an issue that you've been having for a while on trying to get something to swim just how you want it. Alright, so now I'm going to work this through. It's the only problem about using this smaller eyed hook is this spider wire. It likes to fray a decent amount. Okay. So there I have that, and then I'm just going to loop this through. So now it's going to create this loop right here. Yep. I didn't like how that was going anyhow. I want the loop to be pulling down, and I'll explain that a little bit better as I get this in here. So start your loop from the top and go down through. The first time I went up through it, and then this way your loop is going to be on the bottom. See how the wire is coming down on this one? The wire's coming down, my loop's on the bottom. When I did it the last time, it was facing up, so it would have kicked my tail end up a little bit. So now that I have this in place, this is the other unique thing on this pattern. Let me see if I can find them. These are just 2/0 check beads, and they're bigger than the standard ones that you'll see me use a lot. I probably couldn't have seen that one with my fat finger, but this one has a little square shape in the center. Sometimes you have to pick through these to find exactly what you're looking for, a good fit for the hook. But I'm going to try not to drop this one. There we go. And now what this does is I can rotate this and it actually catches, that square hook catches and sits perfectly right on there. Now to ensure that it's going to stay there, I'm taking a smaller bead and I'm backing this. This is where it's really going to get tricky. Look at that, it went smooth the very first time. I'm going to take a smaller bead, the standard size bead that I typically use, and it's going to sit right there. So that's going to force that square portion to bump up against the round part of the hook, and it's going to secure that thing to keep our S-swim limited. So now I'm just going to set that off to the side. I'm going to bring in the front hook. This is an Ahrex TP650, or is it 650? Yeah. Got my numbers mixed around there, but 26-degree bend on the front of this, like the Shad Rep D&D, the SID, so on and so forth. We're going to go ahead and get our get our thread connected here. Now I'm going to bring the back half on, and I'm just going to get it secured for now. Just going to get it secured. Still going to make sure that my thread isn't overlapping, just like I do with the beetle on. Get those two running parallel. Just get some nice loose wraps on there at first, and then I want to pull this as snug as I can get it, but to still not have, to still keep the level plane that I want right here. And so if I pull this too tight, it winds up kicking the back end straight up in the air, and that's not what we're after on this. So now I'm going to take and wrap this as close to the eye, or as close to that bead as possible, and you can see it really limits how much of a swim that you get on this, but we're still running straight back for the swim. If you take the line from your hook right here, you run it straight back, you're still going to be running perfectly straight with this back hook. I know with the Ahrex or anything, they have a little bit steeper of a curve in this back section, so it's not going to look like it's straight. Just make sure that you don't go too far back, and just give it a quick eye before you tie this in the rest of the way. When I was first trying to do this concept with this swim, I had so many different wild ideas. I had one to where I thought it would be a great idea to use Mallard flanks that would connect from the back hook to the front hook, and I thought that would limit the motion a little bit. It didn't. It just ripped the stuff up. So there have been a lot of different ideas, a lot of different failed attempts on this one, but finally we got something that we're after. With this spider wire, I didn't mention that when I cut it, it's just like gel spun. It's the same thing as gel spun, really. You just take it, and when you're cutting it, don't let your scissors slip out of your finger. When you're cutting it, instead of trying to snip it, just push right through it. It'll give you it'll be a cleaner and easier cut that way. So now we're going to go back to a dubbing loop here, and I'm going to take this the whole way back then just open loop that up to the front. I'm going to take this and run the dubbing almost up to the bend. I'm just leaving myself a little bit of room to tie in those 3 mallard flanks. I want to be starting the collar right on the bend of this hook. Let me find my dubbing loop tool here again. Get that in the cradle. Let me get a little bit more there. And then I'm just going to make this, just going to get the taper how I want it here, make sure that I'm pretty consistent throughout the build of this little dubbing loop. Make sure my material's rather consistent. And then we'll give this another quick spin. There we go. Now we're just going to run this right to where we left off. Like I said, leaving a little bit of room there, maybe 1/8 of an inch, to tie in the rest of our flank feathers, and then we'll start on the head. Try and find some feathers that aren't terribly beat up. That'll make a good top right there. I'll take that. I want to try and get some bigger feathers. Obviously, I mean, the hook's longer. I want to just try and get some bigger feathers. That way it follows the taper, or it creates the taper that we're after, you know. Wider in the front, a little more slim in the back. So I'm going to have a really tough time sorting through this, because these feathers are not the best. That's not even going to come close. Not even coming close. Let's see how we look here. That'll do. So now I just want to barely touch the feather on the back hook with this one. I'm just barely touching it. And this is also going to limit a little bit of the side to side. Not a ton, but it will help with to eliminate some of that S-swim. I know a lot of folks are probably hearing that and saying, eliminate an S-swim. What in the hell would you do that for? Yeah, I thought the same thing. I was like, why go away from what was working? But I remember, so much as a kid, how effective that Rapala was, and more so than anything, it was just a challenge to me as a tyer. Really, I wanted to figure out a design to better mimic that pattern. So there comes the clown car. Alright, now that won't work. That won't work. I'm going to do the same thing on your side of the fly here. I'm going to match these up. Give some nice loose wraps to start. And then really crank down on them afterwards. Now the last thing that we're going to do on this one is find that good feather that I set aside before we work on the deer hair head. Is I'm just going to grab this. I don't know if I like this feather. I don't know if I like this one. me get a look of it here. I don't. I thought at first look it was going to be good, but got a little squirrely on me. So we're going to look through here and find just the right feather. This one looks a lot better. That one looks better. Yeah. That'll do. I would like for this one to be a little bit wider, in all honesty, but I'm not going to sit here and sort through for the perfect feather just to make this one look absolutely perfect for the video. Yeah, that'll work. That'll work. So there you can see we have it overlaying. I would like for it to be a little wider, a little more broad on this top one for the front, but this one works pretty good. I mean, it meshes through there pretty well, and then we have a nice straight line going all the way back from our front to back, or front hook to back hook, I should say. So now I'm going to get rid of this 100, and I'm going to switch to the 2. Want to, you can take, I didn't fold over any of these Mallard flanks. I got some really tight wraps on them, but if you want to, you can just take a little bit of zap to secure them. I don't like when Mallard flanks fall out, because then I have to throw the fly away, because it's just not the same. So, find a junk feather here. Just soak up some of that glue. Bit more of a rotation on that. I like that. Alright, I'm going to switch over to the 200 now, and I'm going to build the collar on this fly. Now, because this was my favorite color to fish in Rapalas as a kid, that's what we're going to do this one in. So we're going to go with some red deer hair. Red head on a yellow body. That clown for the Rapala, I couldn't tell you how many smallmouth I caught on this thing. A couple of trout too, if I remember. I think Dad caught a really nice trout, which they're rare in the Juniata. Little Juniata are there, but they're pretty rare in Juniata proper. So. Make sure that your tips are nice and even. I think I'm going to give that one more stack actually. Some of them are a little uneven. I'll give this one more go. Alright, so all we're using this for is strictly a collar. That's it. So I'm going to measure this out. Tips are going about back to the point of the hook on this one. And I'm going to cut this off square. There we go. I'm going to give a quick spin of the thread, and then I'm going to capture this collar. Didn't quite spin enough. There we go. I'm going to set this collar in and then work my way through it. There you can see we get that nice flare on the collar. Everything looks pretty clean. And then on the underside, we don't have any deer hair. I have a feeling that that is going to want to walk out on me. Yeah, I'm not happy with it. Not happy with it. This isn't the best quality of deer hair. This is body hair. I would like to have the belly, but I'm going to use the body hair. I wasn't going to be happy with that, so I'm going to subject you to another round of listening to me hit the stacker off the disc. See if I can get a better cut of deer hair on this. There we go. Get that good and cleaned out. We'll drop this back in the stacker. Man, I'm making a mess out of this. You'd think I'd never tied with deer hair before. Making a mess out of it. Alright, same thing. Measure this out, get the tips going back to the point of the hook, between the point and the barb. Give this another quick spin. I'm already liking that better. Now I'm just going to press this down over the top, get that nice half moon, and then I'm going to walk a few tighter wraps with the 200 on this. Now you can see we've got that nice half moon, no interference with the flank feathers on the side. Everything still looks good. Now we're going to stack a set and spin one right at the front. So I want to get as much deer hair in this as possible. And I could probably even go with a little bit more, but we'll call this good. Now you want to make sure when you're doing this, you cut the tips off. You're working with the absolute most hollow part of this deer hair. Man, this stuff's garbage. This stuff's garbage. I need to wind up taking like 3 times as much as I want. 3 times as much as I would normally use, because this stuff has so much junk in it. Not the best quality of deer hair. That was one pull through the comb. Not the best quality. But we'll make do. We'll make do. There we go. Got 2 good pulls through there. Now, like I was saying, you want to make sure that you're working with the most hollow portion of this deer hair, and that's going to be from the tips back. All of this stuff right there is going to be the best stuff to work with. It's going to flare the most. This stuff right here isn't even hollow, so it's not going to flare for you at all. So what I'm going to do is just grab this right here. I'm going to come behind my thumb and I'm going to trim right on that section. That way I know I'm getting the majority of this nice hollow deer hair. And I've also found, after tying, I don't know, a couple hundred, maybe 1,000 of these, that when you're stacking deer hair, especially if you're doing two-tone, we're not doing two-tone on this one, it's pure red, but if you're doing two-toned, it is so much easier to start on the bottom. So make sure that you catch your center section here. Give this a nice loose wrap, another loose wrap. Now you can kind of work this around, and you can see I'll spin this. Well, you can't see with my finger there if I move it. I still have a clear path. There, I'll just hold that. I still have a clear path. There's no interference. All of my material's down to the side. And then I'm going to come up like this and pull up. That's what's going to stack this hair. And it'll pull down and it flares out. If it were better quality, it would flare out a lot more, but we're going to work with what we have here because I wanted to do this one in yellow and red. Looked like the center of this deer hair was better than the rest of it, so I'll take another chunk in the center and flare this out, clean this up real good. The same thing, I'm going to cut the tips off. Now I'm going to set this right on the top. I'm going to use the exact same thread path that I used for the bottom. Loose wrap, loose wrap. Hold everything together and pull. See how it just flares that out? You have almost a perfect stack, and if it were two-tone you would be able to see it a lot better. Boy, that stuff's really dyeing my fingers. I'm getting red fingers here. So now what I'm going to do is just take this and I'm going to move everything back as best as I can. Get a couple of wraps in front of this. Just push this stuff back, and I want to get one good chunk of deer hair to spin right in the very front. And I'm going to take probably 3 or 4 times what I normally would on this. It's going to look obscene when I put it up to the hook, but this stuff just, like I keep saying, isn't the best. So we'll have to adapt our selection that we take on our hair here. Alright, get all of these loose fibers out of here as best I can. Now, there we go. This one's just going to be a pure spin. So now what I'm doing is I'm taking my left hand, and it's my ring finger and my thumb, and that's pulling the bottom section back. Now I'm pulling the top section back with my middle and pointer finger, and I don't have any hair coming through here. That's really important, especially if you're doing tones. You don't want to have deer hair coming through there. And then once I have everything pulled back, I set the material in, I grab it with my middle and pointer finger, get that a little bit tighter, and then we're just going to spin. There we go. Everything's nice and clean. There's no deer hair in there that's trapped. Nothing's interfered with. And we're able to just take this now and peel this back, get a couple of good wraps right in front, and then we'll go ahead and whip finish. Yeah, not quite. too much thread, too much deer hair. And the hook's bent down at an angle, so I'm just making excuses as to why I'm struggling right now. Just making excuses. Alright. That's finished up. Last thing to do is trim. Before we trim, as always, we're going to take and fluff this deer hair out real nice. Get everything nice and clean. That way when we make our cuts, it's going to have a nice wedged head to it. And now, I'm going to turn the vise away from the camera here for a little bit. And just go ahead and cut this. Hopefully, it's still in the frame pretty well. Make our first cut. I'm going to flip this over, make the cut going along the line of the bend in the hook. Don't get real aggressive at the front or at the first cut. Just get your overall general shape that you're after. There we go. I'll spin this around so the camera can see it. There's the first cuts on this wedged head. You really can't get too much deer hair in these patterns, whether you're doing the D&D, the Sid, or this pattern. Anything on the wedged head where you're having a really tight trim, you cannot get enough deer hair in here. Or you cannot get too much, I should say. The more that you can fit on that hook, the better. Alright, now I'm going to work the sides here. Just going to spin this. Push my blade just slightly through there. Like I said, I'm not worried about getting that overall shape. I just want to get the majority of the hair out of the way and get the generalized shape of this pattern. Same thing, I'm going to come around on this other side, push right through. Get everything pretty well in the ballpark of what we're looking for on the head on this one. There you can see that's just with a couple of cuts with the razor blade. Now I'm going to come through and fine tune this one. The underside is looking a lot better than the top right now. This blade's about on its last leg. Just about done. Be really careful when you're coming through here not to cut your mallard flanks. If you have to, you can do some scissor work. If you're worried about getting too close with the razor blade, you can just go through and trim those up with the scissors if you want. If I make it through this video with this blade, it'll be a miracle. There is the overall look of what you want on this one. I'm not going to subject you, if you've watched me do these wedged heads many times before, I'm not going to subject you to all the fine-tuned trimming that I'm going to do on this one. Let me stay zoomed in there. But I'll finish it up before I take the picture. You'll be able to see the picture and everything. But that's the overall gist of what we're after. Let me give it a quick rotation there. And then I'll throw some eyes on it, touch it with the UV, hit it with the torch, and then we're done. That one took a lot longer than it should have, but I got a little picky on material there a few times, which isn't anything out of the ordinary, so no one should be shocked by that. As always, if you guys have any questions or comments, leave them with me. I've been slacking here the last couple of weeks. I've got a few comments in there that I have to get back to some folks on. I'm getting to them, I promise, just a little busy here, and I feel like I'm getting a little run down with a cold or something too, so maybe knocking a little bit out of me. So anyhow, there is the clown car. Like I said, questions or comments, leave them with me and I'll get back to you. But thanks as always for watching, and I'll catch you next week.